Hey everyone, this is Feridun, the co-founder of SwishSwoosh, and welcome to another episode of our InTune series. Today we are diving into a truly unique part of the audio world, monster and creature vocalization. Sébastien Croteau is the mastermind behind some of the most terrifying sounds in blockbuster films and hit video games, and he's also the co-founder of the Monster Factory. We'll be talking about how Sébastien brings these creatures to life using just his voice, his journey from metal vocalist to monster maker, and what it takes to succeed in this niche field. It's going to be a fun ride, so stick around. Hey everyone, I'm pretty sure that today's interview is going to be full of fun because my guest is Sébastien Croteau. Welcome, Sébastien.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
As far as I know, you're a human being, but your voice is a real monster. Can you please introduce yourself with a monstrous intro?
Absolutely. My name is Sébastien, and I do monster and creature sound for a living.
All right, now I'm feeling scared then.
This better be good. Actually, quick intro. By trade, I've been a metal vocalist for 35 years. I started as a choir boy singing in church, and then I discovered metal music, and that was it for me for the church. and then I went into what we call extreme voices in metal. So I started, of course, with bands like Metallica, Slayer, and then I went into some heavier stuff like Napalm Death, Suffocation, Obituary. So I went in deep into training my voice to do this sound. And then around 97, I started to do throat singing. I was blessed and lucky enough to be trained by Tibetan monks and by a world-renowned specialist for throat singing. So Inuit throat singing, Tuvan throat singing, Mongolian throat singing, Tibetan throat singing. And it's only in 2005 that I actually started to do my first voiceover recording session in video games. That was for Far Cry Instinct. And it's actually a friend of mine who was working at Ubisoft Montreal, and they were looking for a weird voice for their game. And he knew me, so I was like, hey, maybe this guy can do a good job. And that's how it started. More and more, and after that, companies asked me for more people. Because, of course, video game, we need variety. We have female, male character. And because I knew a lot of metal vocalists in Montreal, I was like, yeah, I know a few people who might help. So that's how slowly, on a period of 15 years, we started building what is the Monster Factory today. The Monster Factory is a company I created 4 years ago. And it's basically, we specialize in monster, creature, voices, people screaming, dying, in pain, getting burned. Everything that involves vocal effect or vocal distortion, this is our specialty because we've been training for that. Yep, and I created the company 4 years ago, and since then, we've been working on probably 40 plus video game, a few movies. The last movie we've done was Night Shyamalan, The Watchers. We've done creature vocalization for this. And video game, the last few one we did were Baldur's Gate 3, Warhammer, Hellblade 2, Dead by Daylight also, we've done a bunch. So yeah, I have close to 80 voice talent all over the world. And I'm pretty busy.
That's a really niche field, by the way. I'm going to have a question about that as well. Okay, you started as a metal vocalist and then you started voice casting. And I can see that. What inspired you to get into this voice acting thing? I mean, how did it come about? You just mentioned a little bit, but maybe you can give a little bit details.
Well, the first reason is money. No. The thing is, if you know a few people who are into metal band, you know that we don't make much money from our craft, right? We rehearse, practice, we put passion into it for years and years and years. And in my case, like I've had the same band since 1993, and we're working on a new album right now, and I never made any money in metal. This is a passion that we have, and very few chosen one or can actually make it work enough so that they make money out of it. That was really the idea that what I've learned into metal music, I could actually do it with one of my other passion, which is video game. Like right now behind me, you only see my movie collection. You should see my video game collection. I have a lot. And also because I've always loved voice exploration, exploring what we can do with our instrument, trying to find new sound or new combination or vocal effect. So for me, it was always more the exploration aspect, the creative aspect, also the working in video game that allow you to do, even if it's not music, you still get to explore, you still have space to actually do stuff with your voice. So for me, that was the main factor that got me into this. And it's still the main factor who keeps me into this industry. Like still, even after 19 years of doing that, I still have the same passion. I still have the same willingness to explore. But now I have more people to do it with me. I'm basically a 5-year-old kid in a sandbox, and I'm just looking for friends to play with me with my little monster toy, like blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you have the space. If we are talking about a monster which doesn't exist in the real world, so you need to create something very special to it. And that one of my question is related to that. When you're designing these creature sounds, how do you decide what it should sound like? I mean, what factors play role into that, and how do you get that primal energy? Do you feel it in your bones?
I feel it everywhere. The thing is, first, there's a thing that I call vocal archetype. When a audio reference of a character is seen by many, many, many people, either in a movie or in a video game, it becomes a reference for those people. And they find that voice to be realistic and believable for this specific type of character, right? I'm going to give you an example. If you think about a voice for goblin or orc, right? Well, either they're speaking British or Cockney because of Lord of the Ring, and orc, whoa, meat is back on the menu, boy. It's down there. Goblin, hey, what about their legs? It's higher. Yeah. Still today, when I'm asked to voice an evil witch, the reference is the witch in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Because this movie was massively seen by a bunch of people. And even to this date, when we think about evil witch, we have the, I'm melting. So vocal archetype is real, and is real for many types of creature. Dragon, goblin, orcs, zombie. You know, back in the 60s, zombie in Romero, in the movies made by George Romero, back in the day, the sound was, oh, right? If you remember playing Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation 1, the sound was for zombie were mostly, oh. And then came 28 days later, not zombie, infected, and the remake of Dawn of the Dead. And now the zombies were running. So the dynamic of the voice needed to change. So this is where the came to be, right? And this today is the main vocal archetype for zombie. Then after, there's a few. If you play, for example, Days Gone, sometime in the Horde, you can hear something like that, which is inhaled voices. For the big zombies in The Last of Us, sometimes it's down there. Of course, the clicker, which is now really difficult to put in any other game without people thinking, that's a clicker. So vocal archetype, when you play a lot of video games like me and you listen to a lot of movie like me, at some point you become knowledgeable about which voice fits the best. Of course, when you don't have any reference, looking at visual element like facial, the face, do you have fangs? Or is the creature lipless, jawless? Does the creature have eyes or any other feature? And then, of course, the background. Is it a warrior race, a peaceful race? Sometimes the function can actually influence, not necessarily the sound, but the voice acting. Is the creature a priest, a sniper, a grenadier, a grunt. Those things will come to influence the voice acting a little bit more. Recently at Gamescom, we did a presentation with a friend of mine, Molly Eddie Carrolls, which is a creature designer. So her job is to visually design a monster. And the presentation was me explaining what element I was taking from her creature to actually build the sound for that. And sometimes this was an aquatic creature, like a big monster in the deep sea. And one of the reference I took was, this is what I call folklore. Basically, I listened to a few videos on YouTube where people recorded sound in the ocean, and those sounds are still to this date unexplained. We don't know what made those sound. So I listened to a bunch of them. I took some of the sound signature of them and I put them a little bit in there. Sometimes I get to listen also a lot to animal vocalization. The problem with animal sound library is that you never know the context. Why are they doing those sounds? But when you listen to it on YouTube, you can actually see the context. Is it idle? Is it just detection? Is it attacking? So you have a better idea. This is one of the things also that I do a lot, like listen to the sound pattern and and it's very interesting. And for some stuff, it influences the weight analyzation for different creature and monster.
Yeah, as I understand from your answer, the people that are creating a sound for a special thing, let's say a zombie, the first people are maybe the most advantageous people, because they are opening a path to the others that will be creating voice acting for the upcoming, let's say, video games or films. So they have more space, I think, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. Today, it's difficult to come up with something really that hasn't been done before. And the thing, you probably know that everyone comes to us and say, hey, we want really something unique. And we want something that has never been done before. And usually my take on it is, yes, but do you know about vocal archetype? Do you know? Because that's the thing. If people are expecting a certain type of sound for their creature, and for them, this is the audio reference that they have. And if you have that audio reference with the character, they're going to find that character believable and realistic within the confine of a virtual video game. So if you play outside of that, instead of being immersed in the game, they're going to be like, what's that? So for me, playing within those references, of course, we can sometimes add a little spice here and there, but going off script totally for those different kind of characters is not going to work. Because people are expecting those sounds.
Right. Yeah. How does your metal vocal skills help you to create those terrifying voices?
First of all, for me, when I started, I was lucky enough to be a choir boy before, so I had some singing experience. The most difficult part is to get accustomed to what's happening, because rough vocal effect or extreme vocal effect, these are combination of different parts of the vocal tract that are actually working together to create a specific sound. And like a Olympic athlete, you need to train for something specific in order to be able to sustain and to actually have the endurance. And so part of what I do, because you probably heard all the stories about voice actor losing their voice after 15 to 20 minutes of screaming, right? Yeah. And it might have happened to you if you do voice sometime, and you don't have the same training as me. You do like for half an hour, 40 minutes, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. So those skills are particularly efficient for video game, because we can actually do recording session for like 2, 3, 4 hours without rescheduling. And in 19 years that I've been doing that, we never had to stop a recording session because of vocal stress. And we've all heard the stories about, we had one, we had to reschedule, but because a voice talent got hit by a car, which is nothing related to the voice. So it's not vocal stress. It's basically a huge car ram into him. And the thing is, it's fine. 2 weeks after, it was in the studio doing voices and crutches and doing his character. It was actually for Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy. So This kind of training allows us to have a vocal endurance that is second to none. We have the capacity to scream without hurting ourselves. We can do it for a very long time because this is our primary focus. Like, that's all we do. We've learned how to scream and how to do it, let's say, in a safe way, because nothing is ever totally safe. For me, training only diminishes the risk. It doesn't eliminate it, like in anything. This gives us an edge over regular voice actor who actually sometimes, like, they need to schedule a lot of different recording sessions to actually get this done. I did a recording session for a game. All the other actor took 6 hours to record all their lines. It took me 3 hours, 30 minutes to do everything, because I was like, do you need a break? I was like, no, I'm good. Let's go. And they told me that, of course, every voice actor is not trained like me. Were requesting break like every 30 minutes. Like, they needed 10 minutes every 30 minutes to be. So that's one thing. And of course, being able to control what we do allow us to use different combination. We use inhale voice technique. We use the uvula. This is actually the little thing dangling in the back of the throat. We can use tissue in the back of the soft palate for zombie sound. We can actually combine. If I take the uvula, down. So I do believe that this training allows us to be better equipped to do creature vocalization.
So do you believe that with enough practice, everyone can reach to create those voices, or is that kind of a natural gift?
There are very few different, every voice is unique, right? But if we look at it from objectively, we all have the same part. You have a uvula, you have tissue in the back of the soft palate, you have a tongue, you have a jaw, you have false vocal fold, you have vocal fold, everything is there. The thing is, sometimes some people have thicker vocal folds, some thicker false vocal fold. I've seen a double splitted uvula instead of just a straight one, like very tiny differences, but overall, we're all the same. The problem is, sometimes when I train, for example, voice actor, because I do that a lot, is that the amount of focus that they're putting on their training is never going to be the same as metal vocalists or people, doing that almost every day or every week. Voice actor has to do an audiobook, a commercial, and then the time that he has to actually practice that is very limited. And so that's why it takes a very long time for them, longer than any metal enthusiast would like to just learn a metal vocal, because they're going to focus on that one thing, getting good at vocal distortion. For a voice actor, it's your job. So you need first to be careful. So when I work with voice actors and actresses, I have an approach. It's progressive. It's over time, but it usually takes way more time to train than.
Yeah. Do you require the other team members to be a metal vocalist, or are there any surprises?
Not always. Not always. Sometimes people have a natural talent, and it's funny because it's mostly the same story. They were kids. They were listening to cartoons. They were trying to imitate or doing sound, doing weird voices. Like, it's basically all the same story. All people that I work with that are voice actors and actresses and are not metal vocalists, they basically all have the same story of them doing annoying sound. Their mom, their dad, their sisters, their friend, and people are like, shut up, stop that. They were playing with their voice. So technically, they've been training for a very long time to do those voices. So the way I like to present my company usually is I do have vocal stunt performer who are comfortable with acting, and I have actor comfortable with vocal distortion and vocal stunt work. But let's say that probably 75% of my workforce are metal vocalists because of their training. And I need to train them, though. Don't get me wrong. Being a metal vocalist doesn't mean you're a voice actor. You need training for that. You don't suddenly transform like, metal vocalist, boo, here I am, a voice actor. But the thing is, we do have skills that are transferable. If you ever went to a metal concert and you look at the vocalist and he looks like he wants to kill you, it's acting. Because if you go after that backstage and you talk to those people, these are going to be the nicest people you've ever met, like most of the time. So we're used to create a persona on stage, sometime for a whole show or sometime for different song, right? So this is not foreign to us. This is not like, no, this is actually something that we are comfortable with. But still, video game voice acting requires training. This is where I train the people that are part of my roster specifically for that, to understand the subtleties and the nuances of video game voice acting. And because it's not the same, in metal, you rehearse 1,000 times a song before presenting it to the public.
Yeah.
For video game, you need to improvise. So you need to be comfortable, doing something that you haven't rehearsed for 100 hours, right? And you need to put yourself out there and do it. For most people, they're comfortable. But for some people, that transition is not working because they need the security of, making sure that what they're showing has been rehearsed and done. In video game, it's impossible.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Monster Factory. You have got really cool references. You work with Capcom, Ubisoft, Bethesda, and you work for really cool titles. And can we know what kind of services you give? And we know that you're doing vocalization, but what kind of things you also give?
One of the aspects that I love the most is what I would call sound creation, where basically companies come to us and they say, we have no idea about the sound for a creature and monster. Could you provide some? Could you create some, right? The first time I really had to do it was on Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy. I had to come up with the sound for like 26 creature and aliens. And I absolutely loved it. We're talking about creative freedom. That for me is a big thing. I'm comfortable. Like if a company comes to me and say, we need zombie next week, I'll do it. But having the liberty to think about, that would work. Like, look at this creature, this element, this is how we could create a voice is actually, for me, really fun. So the first one we did was Marvel Gone, and now we're doing more and more. A few games that I can talk about yet, but we've done a lot. So sound creation, we do a good bunch. And then, of course, we can do the casting, because I have a roster of close to 80 people all over the world, because sometimes monster, they do talk. So localization is required. Yeah. So then I need a voice actor who can actually reproduce the same voice technique. Because sometimes if you don't have one, you can have an amazing, for example, English version with a voice like this. It's going to be cool. And then when you listen to the Japanese version, it's basically just this. So there's no consistency in between languages. I was like, I need a team of people who are able to do that. So we do the casting, the recording, we do the voice direction. And the thing is, voice direction for creature and monster is quite different than regular voiceover. Now, in a regular voiceover, you would never, as a voice director, think about feeding the exact way you want the line to a voice actor. That would be a little intrusive. The thing is, for creature vocalization, like we basically work without any script. We just work with vowel and consonant to create sound. It's not scripted. We can produce around 200 sound per hour. So you can imagine after a 4-hour recording session, we've done 800 sound. So at some point for the voice talent, it becomes a really tedious mental process, having to come up with all the variation. So this is where I come in. At some point, I can see that the voice talent is struggling with the variation for his voices. So then I do the sound myself and I do the variation that I want the voice talent to do. So as a voice director, you have to be proficient in being able to do different voice techniques. So you can actually do a variation and then the voice talent can actually replicate it. You wouldn't do that in regular voiceover, but for creature and monster sound, that's the kind of thing that we do when I do voice direction. And we do post-production, of course, cleaning up, editing all the file. Sometimes we do a small sound design. It happened in the past for a couple of games, but it's not usually required because what we can provide doesn't need a lot of post-production or dehumanizer, pitch it up or down, or it's already scary and disgusting naturally. It happened in the past that sometime, for the client, we did a little bit of that, because now what we do a lot is voice layering. We record many different voice technique on top of one another. And the result, if you were to listen to it, you wouldn't believe that these are just human voices. You would believe that it's sound design with many animal sound, but it's not.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that a whole lot more recently because the results are pretty amazing. So that's basically the kind of, and of course, it's going to be announced soon. We're starting to build our own set of sound libraries, because basically, it's one thing to be able to service AAA. Usually they want tailor-made stuff, so I'm not worried. But indie and smaller company, they exist. And sometimes they can afford our services, but they can afford to buy sound libraries.
Right.
So this is basically one of the things that we started to do. I think the first one will be released in October, basically because, well, you're working on audio sound library as well, because you need to be able to have different kind of product to fit different kind of budget. And if you're not flexible, it's going to be hard to survive the long run.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing we've been working on.
Yeah. You mentioned that your team is like spread out across the globe. So how do you manage to handle the recording quality?
Well, I make sure to rent a professional recording studio. Sometimes it's complicated because in Montreal, I'm lucky because I have 3 recording studio with a Senkenko 100K microphone. I'm sure you know about this microphone. Everyone in sound and audio knows about it. And I can tell you 99% of all my clients, that's the microphone they want. And it's not all the recording studio who has it. So usually it limits my casting ability sometime when I need to cast something and they want them to record. Now I know that I can cast in Los Angeles. I know I can cast in Sweden. I know I can cast in Poland. But usually when it's that, it's a little bit more limited. But usually it's all done remotely. So we have a listen tooling. So the client, because I want all the time the client to be there when we're recording. Because as you know, when you sign contract, sometimes you have a redo clause. And if they're not satisfied, you need to re-record everything. Right. So if the client is there for 4 hours and he's smiling all the time, it's going to be hard to argue that he's not satisfied.
These are all happening online, right? So you don't need to travel a lot for voice direction and all this stuff.
Luckily, because I travel enough already with video game conferences, like I wouldn't want to travel more because it's exhausting. But yeah, we rent a recording studio, whatever the voice talent is for Blade. That was my friend Elizabeth, who lives in Copenhagen. So we rented a studio in Copenhagen. So I was doing the voice direction. Usually we use Zoom or Google Meet for the visual. And then we have listen to, so we can hear directly from the microphone what's happening, because Zoom for audio is not good. And usually for Zoom, vocal distortion is actually a background noise. So it tends to eliminate it. So this is not great for client who wants to listen and chime into what's happening. And usually we have the video animation. When the recording studio share the screen, we can see the video animation for the voice talent so that we can make sure that we are matching exactly what's happening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have a small delay that we have to work with in between what's happening there and what we hear. We're like, oh my God, I hope usually it works. But yeah, recording remotely has its challenges. This is why I'd rather do it in person, but when needed, that's the kind of thing that we also do.
Cool. Your field is very niche, and is it hard to explain people what you're doing? Like, I'm going to be a monster today. So.
I probably could make a T-shirt and
right.
and it would be like, I make people scream. That would be part of what I do. But people from entertainment might think it's something else. So no, usually, and that's the funny thing is because I travel a lot to video game conferences and I get to talk a lot about what we do. And usually because it's so niche, people tend to remember it more than something that is more general.
Right.
And usually if they don't remember my name, next time I see them, they go, monster guy. So I think they get it. But it's I think the uniqueness of what we do. And the thing is, if because people think creature vocalization done by human is new. It's not new. Like I've been doing it for 19 years. People like D. Bradley Baker, Fred Tatasciore, Steve Bloom, a lot of that, they've been doing that for years and years and years. The thing is, I never saw any other talent agency trying to develop that market. And of course, you would have to be crazy because if you think about creature sound in video game, probably 80% of them are done with animal sound library, maybe 70. The rest is done with dehumanizer. And if you look at the number of video game being produced, creature vocalization done by human, it's probably 0.001% of all the games being made.
Yeah.
So it's very small. I'm trying to develop that niche. This is why I travel so much. But I know that all the money I've invested over the last 4 years, I'm never going to see it again. I don't care. So in that sense, I'm a pretty bad businessman. And I understand why other voice agency wants to make money, don't want to develop that niche actively, because they're going to lose money for X number of years without any guaranteed return on their investment. But I do it because I like it. And so far, I'm knocking on wood, we've been doing more and more. So I was able to convince more people to jump on board of creature vocalization done by human. And I'm kind of proud because this is, like, as you know, this industry rely heavily on technology. And people have been working with animal sound library and dehumanizer for years and years. So it's hard to change people's habit when they've been working like this for 5, 10, 15 years. And to say, hey, I might have something better to offer you. And they're like, usually they go, well, yeah, maybe try it. And when they look at a portfolio, they say, okay, they look serious. But it's funny because it's always after the work is done that they're like, thank you. See you on our next project. Or we did a recording session with a client of mine recently in China. And after 3 days of recording, the audio director asked us, can I ask you what kind of plugin you use for the vocal effect? And I was like, what do you mean plugin? We don't have any plugin. Everything you heard for the last 3 days was totally natural. And you should have seen his face. It was like, oh, because even him, he didn't knew that was actually something that we could do. And also because I do believe that monster and creature require a performance intent that you put in the sound while you're doing the action. And this is something animal sound library can never have. Well, animal sound library are not performances. Mm-hmm. We don't know the context of why they're doing the sound, so we don't know the intent. And basically trying to take a few of those sounds, mix them together, and say, oh, that's fear, that's anger. It's still your perception as a sound designer, right? So this is your perception. But the thing is, perception and intent are two different things. Intent comes from within. Perception is coming from outside. So for me, being able to provide that intent in creature vocalization, I do believe it's a game changer for these creatures, because they do deserve love. Like they need it more. They need it more than anything.
I can clearly see that you have a great passion on what you've been. Yeah. That's I think that's the key point for anything that we are trying to achieve. If we are feeling some passion on something, so you need to go on and do what you do, like,
and have that best. Little light in your eyes that light up when you talk about.
That's right.
The thing is, we both work in a creative industry, right? And people tend to respond to two things: professionalism, your ability as a service provider to deliver what you're selling, and passion. And if you can have both and you're passionate when you think to people, they will respond to that passion and they will say, I want to work with that guy, or I want to work with that company because that team, that company, that person is so passionate about it. Like it makes me want to hey, let's go, let's do this. So we're lucky in that sense to work in a creative industry. For me, this is what I love. The reason why I wake up every morning, apart from my beautiful family and my girlfriend and my cat and everything else, it's that.
Yeah.
It's
right. We're going to see how passionate you are. Just for fun, if you could turn into a creature that you have voiced before, what would it be and why?
Wow. I love zombies. Probably because they were human before. Because I have a way to explain zombie. For me, because they were human, they lost the most important thing of all, their capacity to love and to be loved. And for me, this is where their rage is coming from. Because if we were to take away everything you love, you would be enraged. You would be furious. Like in my movie collection, I have, probably, black and white zombie back in the day when it was linked to voodoo. This all, I've lost my humanity and I became something else. And that desire to return to being a human, this is why they're eating the flesh and the brain. They're trying to, grasp their old memory or have things to remind themselves when they were human. So for me, zombie would be a creature that I love doing the most.
I like this answer. All right. I have one last request from you. You are free to perform as you wish, and I'm going to show a picture to you. I've just tried to find a creature around me. Beforehand, I want to say sorry because I'm a family man, and that was the only creature I could find in my room. Can you vocalize this? Great.
I can do cute creature. Like most people think I'm just doing disgusting, slimy monster. But sometimes we do little cute stuff. This is why I like...
I just thought that you are not always making the things that you, in your imagination, sometimes some cute creatures.
I love cute. I love doing them. This is not what people ask us the most, but I love doing them. And we have a few voice techniques that can be useful to voice a cute creature. But usually it's like... we voice the things that dwells in the dark.
Okay, I think I'm done with the questions. Before wrapping up, do you want to add anything?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Like I always enjoy, sharing with people like yourself, people who works in audio and are passionate about what they do. So to give me an opportunity to talk about what I love the most, I'm really grateful for that. So thank you for that. And well, if you want to look at what the Monster Factory is doing, we have social media like everyone else.
Yeah, we're going to put the links.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks.
And we have a few announcements to come on LinkedIn and whatever, but non-disclosure agreement. So I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'm going to have to be patient.
All right. Thank you so much, Sebastien. So have a great day, and I wish you the best in your future career.
Likewise, friend.